Can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about yourself first?
So, hi, my name is Deepak, and I'm a graduate from Vasavi College of Engineering, Hyderabad. I've did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I'm a 2022 graduate. Uh, Recently, I've my interest in web development sparked, and I've wanted to join a web development course. So, I did join a Stack course. In there, I learned the from some front-end technologies like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, and recently I started learning Next.js too. Not much, but I just started. And backend technologies include Node.js, Express, and a database MongoDB. Yeah.
Okay, sure. And can you tell me a little bit about what are the projects you have done and tech stack of the
Okay.
project?
Okay. I've done three projects. One's a real-time chat app. It tech stack. The tech stack of that project is React for frontend and Recoil for global state management and Chakra UI for the styling and the backend Node.js, Express, uh, Node.js Express, and MongoDB. So it's basically a chat app where you can it implements login, sign up, creation of groups, adding of friends, and deleting of friends, and an admin role. Uh, it is implements these features. And another project I've done is a Kanban board where it is interactive. I did not implement sign in and sign up in this the Kanban board. It, so the tech stack of that project is uh, with, React for frontend and React DND kit for the drag and drop free feature. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I used local storage. It's a front end app, so I use local storage for saving the to dos. So it is like you can create columns, and in that columns you can change names. Every column, for example, work in progress, to do, completed, these columns,
Like
and in every column you can create tasks.
like Jira,
This
right?
is the second project. So like exactly like Jira, yeah.
Okay.
And a
And any
third
other project?
project,
Yeah,
and
tell me.
third project, which is a it's not like a Paytm clone like thing, but you can send money through it. Basically implemented small UI and backend. The same technologies. It uses also the same technologies, but I've used ShatCN for the UI.
Okay. So
Yeah,
in the first app you mentioned you use JWT for authentication, right? So can you tell
yeah,
me
yeah.
or explain a little bit about JWT, how it works and how the
Okay,
authentication works with JWT?
okay. JWT is stands for JavaScript. Sorry, no, JSON Web Tokens, which are used to uh, identify the client. So when a user logs in, a JWT token is created in the backend and is sent to the client. And for any further future requests, so the client should send that JWT to identify that unique client in the backend and send the responses according to that client, only specifically to that client. And it is also a security feature that no one can actually send fake requests on behalf of the person. So, but if the
Okay.
JWT token is compromised, but
Uh-huh.
the client is compromised itself, you can say that.
Okay. You said right, like the server can identify the client.
Okay, okay,
So how is
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah,
How
yeah.
is that work?
So, okay, JWT, you can actually implement a middleware inside of your Express app. Uh, so before going to the main thing, the request is blocked in the JWT until the JWT gets verified. We will verify the token through the JWT. There's a library for JWT,
Correct.
and if it verifies, and there is a secret code in
Uh-huh.
where you
I
can
was like,
provide it as an environment variable, and it matches the JWT token with the security code. If the both things matches, and then we can allow the request to the further process.
okay. And what are the like components of a JWT? Do you know? Like what are the
I mean, like
things
methods,
which okay. Yeah, no, not
methods.
methods. Like a JWT string. What are the things it is made up of? Like we have three components of it, right? Like the algorithm.
Okay, okay. I I'm not able to recall this thing. Yeah, it contains three components. Yeah, but I'm not able to recall the exact moment.
Okay. And can you tell me, if I am using HTTP, is JWT a safe thing there or not? Like if I'm using HTTP, not HTTPS, so shall I use JWT or not?
Um, HTTP. Yeah, you can use a JWT in HTTP also.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
use, but is it
we can use.
good enough, or is it safe, or it's not safe? How it
It's never
is?
this. It's never safe. You are visiting a HTTP sites also.
Mhm.
So no, it's not safe. It might not be safe. I'm taking a guess here.
Okay, okay, yeah. As you said, if the JWT is compromised, then it's kind of a hacking, right? And in HTTP,
Yeah,
basically, all the data we sent is not encrypted. So what will
yeah, yeah,
happen is any network attacker can get your HTTP, can get your JWT. So that's the problem.
yeah.
But it's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
we should not use JWT with HTTP.
Hmm.
So you use WebSocket also, right? Can you tell me the difference between WebSocket and a normal HTTPS API, or what is the difference?
Okay.
Why you use WebSocket?
So, okay. HTTP works on the request response cycle, which means that you send a request to a server and the server sends the response to you. That's it. The connection does not exist after that. Request and response. That's it. Closed. If you want to if you want to call the server again, you need to send a request again to the server. So there is no going back and forth in between. You send us a request and it sends a response. That's it. That closed. But when it comes to the WebSockets, when you send the first request itself, it maintains a connection. It is also called a handshake. You can say that after that handshake, it maintains a connection between the server and client. So when server wants to broadcast something to the client, it can broadcast and the server can accept it. And when server wants to something to broadcast to the client wants something to broadcast to the server, it can broadcast. It's a handshake like that through which you can maintain that persistent connection between the client and server. This is the high level of sockets.
Yeah, it's correct only. And so you use local storage also, right? In your application. So
Yeah,
what kind of browser storage are you aware of, and what are their
uh,
advantage,
I'm
disadvantage?
I'm aware of this local storage, session storage. These are mainly two storages, and we can also store in cookies also. But I'm
Correct.
not that aware of cookies. But session storage is like after you close the browser, the storage would get erased. But
Okay.
when you store something in local storage, it is preserved.
Correct.
Cookies also
And
preserved, I guess.
yes, yes, cookies also preserve. And we should store JWT and all those stuff, which we don't want to get
Yeah,
leaked
I
in.
I implemented in local storage JWT storing JWT in local storage.
Uh,
Yeah,
But
but
I
anyone
think
can
the better
access
way is
the local storage.
correct, correct.
Yeah,
They can
mm.
like when there is a scripting attack, right? They can get from local
Mm.
storage.
Local storage.
So there's also one more thing written here in your project, which says about transaction. So what is a transaction? Can you tell me a
Okay.
little bit about that?
Okay. This I implemented in my third project, which is a kind of Paytm clone. I would not say Paytm clone. Okay. The transaction is like the main problem when it comes to sending money, something like that. The main problem is that after you initialize a request from the client side, the request go to the server, and if the server does not send you a response, it means that something happened in the server side. So okay, let me try that. You want to when someone is sending money, you need to deduct it from someone's account and credit it to someone's account. This is the main process. But what if the database gets down or server gets down when you after you deduct someone's account? That information is lost. That information is lost, and so to avoid this, we use transactions in the MongoDB. uh, MongoDB gives us that Mongoose gives us out of the box. So what the transaction the initial phase is we need to check there's some money in the bank account of the first person, and second person is allowed to accept it. These checks needs to be confirmed, and we need to start the transaction. Starting the transaction means that it creates a, what do I say? It creates something. Uh, it
Kind of a
creates a
session.
in sign of a session, yeah, kind of a session, so that the transaction is being taken place. Even after the even if my MongoDB goes down, the transaction erases. We can send the money not sent.
Okay.
So what it does is it deducts it. It does not deduct it, but it takes the money from someone's account and it credits the money to the second person's account. It maintains this.
Okay.
If my database is up, I will commit the transaction. I will, so that the transaction gets updated in the database also. But in between any of these things, something happens to the server or something happens to the database, nothing will happen to uh, my data. I mean, like my original balance is
Okay.
vanishing out, something like that.
So it will
Transactions are
reverse it.
implemented in these places.
So suppose there are
Yeah.
5 steps, and first step
Mm,
is done, second step is done, and in the third step you get
mm,
an error. So it will reverse everything
mm.
back to step
Yeah.
zero,
Yeah.
right?
Mm,
That's
yeah.
good. Yeah. Correct. And are you on your laptop or like or how it is?
Yeah. I'm on my laptop. Yeah.
Okay. So can you share your screen? Like I'll put some question in the chat.
Okay. Just give me a second. I'll delete these things.
No need to do that. Just in the app.jsx you can do this thing, like comment that out wherever it
Okay.
is mounted, and
Mm. Okay.
not
That
the
will
whole
send
thing.
my code. Okay.
Yeah, like I don't think it will work now if you remove it. This is
Mm.
so here. Can you tell me, like, is there any problem with this code, or it's fine, or how it is?
Okay.
Okay, do one thing. Can you turn this app on? Like, let's turn the app on and see the list on the screen.
On screen. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
So
actually
just
yeah.
yeah, just do one thing. Like make a button and add one more name to it. Like if I click on the button, it will add a name to the list.
Okay. You want me to make a button when it's clicked? It adds that name to a list, like search bar or something.
No, not such bad. Like
Input
for
box. You
example,
you you need an input box
no, just
for
a
entering the
button.
name. That's about okay.
No, not even required. Just a button. We can hard code it, right? Like for example, on click of button, I want
Okay.
to
Okay.
add
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
name to the add any name to the list. That's what.
Okay. But it does not actually add it.
You can
But
make
it'll add it,
you
but
can
it'll
make
not be displayed.
correct. You can make
Okay.
necessary changes like whatever you think.
Okay. Cool. I'm actually creating an individual name variable so that it adds this variable every time the button is clicked.
Hmm.
Okay, I have this of this set display name to the array, which contains the previous values. I need the previous values of this. P, comma, eventual name. Okay, and I need to render the list items. Okay, list items is a display name. Yeah, I need to cannot redeclare a block scope. Yeah, and 6. Okay, I'll actually do one thing. I'll remove this thing and yeah.
Okay. Can you, yeah, can you clear this? Can you go to elements once? Let's go to elements.
Okay.
Open this a little bit and find this list. Yes.
Yeah.
Now try to add an element, add name, one more name.
Yeah.
Okay. And do one thing. Try to add the a name first. Like Deepak should come first, and then Brian, Paul, Krug should come. Change the code in a way.
Okay.
Okay, now find the list again. Now try adding name. Yeah.
Okay.
Now you see the
The
problem.
complete direct is re-rendering. Yeah.
Yeah. Why it is happening? Is it one thing is missing here actually? Can you tell me what is it?
Is it keys? Keys is missing?
Yeah, correct. Key is
Yeah.
missing.
Yeah.
So if
Sorry.
you add a key, unique key, then so basically with a key, React like knows right that this
Yeah.
element is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually trying to add a unique element here. So,
Do anything. You can do anything, or you can use the
mm.
index. So map provides the
Oh,
index.
yeah, I can use the index. Yeah.
Use name. We can use
Okay.
name. As
Yeah.
of now, we can use name, but even if the name is repeating, right, that will also create problem.
Uh, I'll use name plus the method.trap. No.
No, because mat.random
I
will
guess
create.
there's a, yeah, I guess there's this thing called nano ID in React built in.
Okay.
Uh,
I don't know about that, but let's use name and see if
okay,
that
I'll try
works.
this thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
See.
Yeah, it's working actually.
Correct. So that's the problem. Like we use
Yeah.
a key which
You
was
need to
not
give the
used.
unique names. Mm.
Correct.
Yeah.
Unique keys. Okay, based on question.
Create a stopwatch application through which users can start, pause, and reset the timer.
You don't
Okay.
need to create any image or something. Just numbers should be common numbers.
Okay. I'm actually stuck here. Well,
Okay. What happened?
uh, so what my initial thoughts were while creating this thing was every time the when we start the timer, every time it will re-render and it will update the timer here.
Okay. Okay. But
And but every re-render, this initially I thought was I'll have the timer ID here so that I can clear it out when it is necessary.
okay.
Uh, that's nice. And I've created a function pause timer. So that it will pause. It'll have the timer ID uh, in its scope, and it clears the timer ID. But every re-render, the timer ID is different. So
Correct. Correct. So, can you? There are two things you can do. One, you can move it outside the thing, like outside the app itself, which is not recommended actually. Or secondly, you
yeah,
can use this thing, right? UseRef. So
status
UseRef,
use rep.
yeah, UseRef
Yeah,
maintains the value
maintenance
in this.
in, during re-renders. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, so I've implemented the start and pause thing.
Positive.
Uh,
Ah, it's positive. And is there anything else?
you want me to implement the reset thing also?
Yeah, Richard, I think you can do, right? Can you tell me difference between like inline block and block elements?
Okay, in the HTML.
HTML,
Yeah.
CSS we have, right?
Okay. So basically, the inline elements use the width of the contents that it is required. The width of the content is the width of the element itself in inline elements. But whereas the block element, it uses the 100% width of its parent element. So it doesn't matter even if we're giving the content that's requires only some width, it actually occupies the whole width of its parent element. And every block element is created under a new line. It does not occupy the previous line space. But in case of the inline element, when a new element, when there are siblings, they'll come side by side. So this is
Correct.
the basic difference between the inline and block element.
Right. And we have also a display inline block, right? So what is that?
Display inline block.
Hmm. So in CSS, we have a property display inline block.
Yeah, inline block. Yes, I've heard. Is it? I guess this is used for making grids. Something.
No. So for example, so you have an inline element, right? And now you want to
Hmm.
add some height and width to it. You have a requirement. So how
Okay.
you'll do that?
Okay.
So
Maybe we can make it display inline block, or we can
correct.
make it block also.
Display inline block. Block will what it will do is it will take you to the. So for example, you are making
Uh,
element block, right? Now you cannot put the
hmm.
element side to it. You can use a text
Yeah.
box
Okay.
always,
Okay.
but
Got it. Got it.
naturally, yeah.
Hmm.
So naturally, it takes
Basic
the
difference
whole
is
width.
that. Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah. Please continue.
yeah.
Okay.
I was saying that naturally, block element will take the
Hmm.
whole width, but inline block,
Hmm.
you can control the width and you can place elements side by side as well. Just like inline,
And
you can.
yeah, and it is inline. And it is inline.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's the difference. And can you tell me about this thing? Like we have positions, right? CSS positions. So what is
Okay.
absolute, relative, static, fixed?
There's actually four positions, I guess. I'll tell you the names first.
Yeah,
Static, absolute, sticky, fixed. These are the four positions.
yeah,
By default, every element has a position static itself. When it comes to the absolute, it's actually placed uh, relative to its immediate parent, which is kind of block. No, okay, which is not static. So
right.
it takes its parent element as a so okay. Let me. I'm making this thing, making a sentence. So absolute. It checks the parental hierarchy. It checks the parental hierarchy, and wherever it finds the position property in its parents that is not static,
Uh-huh.
it'll position itself relative to that parent itself. It'll check the
Okay.
whole hierarchy of the DOM element, the DOM
Right.
object. This is the absolute. And next thing is relative. So relative is basically the placing it uh, the immediate parent itself. It will be relative to the immediate parent itself, and it does not it does not disturb the flow of the elements. It does not disturb that being relative. And fixed is that uh, it will fix the element there itself. It doesn't move left or right. No, no. Okay, I'll get back to fixed ones. I'll explain sticky also. Yeah. Position sticky is making the position sticky means that element will be stick to the page in the window itself when you scroll the up and down. So when you give position sticky and where it needs to stick, so when you scroll down past the element, it will stick to the provided position. So I'm sticking it to the top zero and left zero. So when I scroll that, the element wherever it is in the page, the element goes to top zero. But we need to specify a parent as fixed or non-static thing also for the sticky also.
Right.
And coming to fixed, I'm actually confused with fixed. Mm,
Fixed is just like sticky.
Maybe
Sticky
this
basically
is
is relative till it is not there yet. So for example, you are
okay.
like giving top zero or left zero, right? So at a certain
Hmm.
point, sticky will become fixed, right? So fixed
Okay,
means
yeah,
like
yeah,
it
okay,
will fixed itself with respect to the whole window.
okay,
So and everything else flows over it or below it according to the
okay.
Z index. So
That
that is there.
index, yeah.
Yeah. And can you tell me difference between hidden, visibility hidden, and display none?
Visibility hidden. I've not used visibility hidden, but I've used the display hidden element.
Hidden or
When we
display?
use this display none, sorry, display none.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. I'll take a guess here because
Yeah.
I have two options in my mind. Okay, so display none will actually take the element out of the not take the element. It will not use the space which is like display none. So there is you are not seeing any element there. So why to give space there? So it will not actually provide the space there. So the next element in the order will occupy the space of the display none element. When it comes to visibility hidden, it will actually display nothing in that space. I guess this is the difference between. Am
Yeah,
I correct?
it will not display anything in that space, but what
Hmm.
will the next element do? Will it take the space or it will not take the space?
No, it will not just take the space and it will come where it has to come.
Hmm. This this is problem. Okay, that is correct. Can you
Is
tell
this
me?
correct? Like, okay.
Yeah, that is correct. That is.
Hmm.
Can you tell
Okay.
me difference between let, const, and var?
Okay. The primary difference between the let const and var is like let and const are block scope variables, which means that inside of that flower braces, the scope exists only inside of that flower braces. But when it comes to the var variable, it's function scope. Wherever it is declared, it takes the scope of that uh, it takes the scope of that. If it's declared inside a function, it will have the scope of that function. Outside of that function, it will not be available to use. This is the primary difference between let and var. And between let and const is that, okay. And other thing is that var variables can be redeclared. So if I declare a variable var with var, and I can also declare the same variable in the next line with var, but I cannot do the same thing with let and const. It will give me a reference error. Between let and const is that you can change the let variable anytime you want, but once the const variable is initialized, you cannot change the const variable. This is the high level.
So for example, if I'm making an array, const array is equals to like an array I have given, right? So can I change the array of 3 or array of 4 or not?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, you have this right. So can we write an array here? Like, yeah, let's write an array.
Okay.
And we will use the log, console log. So basically,
Okay.
can I change array 1 of 1 or not? Like, can I make array 1 of
You mean
1?
this index?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, the indexes of elements in the indexes of an array can be changed, but the array itself cannot be changed. So I cannot do const, sorry, r1 equal to a different array. I cannot do this.
Okay.
But I can do this.
And
You cannot change the reference of the array itself. That's what I'm trying to say.
And yeah, can you tell me a little bit about closures?
Okay, closures. I'll take you to my previous example, which I used here. Okay, this is fine. So I've created. Initially I wanted to create the timer ID here. So this function, this exists only inside of this block. I cannot access that timer ID inside of this pause timer function because it is not there in this scope. So what I did was I've taken this thing and I've initialized it in the parent of that this function, so that this can be accessed inside of this, because it creates it whenever a function is created, a closure is formed by uh, binding that function with the references to its environment, the variables to the environment. So whenever a function is created, a closure is formed with the function plus the references to its lexical environment. So this is the basic of the closure.
Okay. Uh, can you tell me about event?
And you can
saying something.
Event bubbling. No. Event bubbling. Okay. Can I tell this with an example? Show this with an example. Okay. Event bubbling actually refers.
And even you can tell me like why it is
Okay, before the event bubbling, we should know the event propagation thing. So whenever there's an element and it has its children inside of it, so there's span and button. So an example, button, span, sorry, it's connected with the. So okay, whenever so I want 3 event listeners to act on this. One is in div, one is in span, and one is in button. But what happens when I click button is that the all event listeners of div and span are also triggered, because the button exists inside of that span and the span exists inside of the div. This is called the event propagation. The event gets propagated throughout its parents.
Right.
So this is event propagation. Event bubbling refers to the which is being triggered first. So
So if I yeah,
I'll
add a event on this button, like let's add on line number 11.
on click.
Not event. Yeah, good.
On click. You want event listener or like on click thing?
Not event listener. So for example, if you click on button, right? And if I add a event handler on div, will it trigger or not trigger?
Yeah, it'll be triggered because the the button exists inside of that div. Yeah, it will get triggered.
Oh. And what can be the use case for this? Like why it is useful? Can you tell me one simple example, like why event bubbling is useful in real time?
Event bubble. Okay. Event bubbling is going from button, span, and next the div element will be triggered. But in case of event capturing, first the div will be captured, span will be captured, next the button is captured. This is the high level of bubbling and capturing thing. But the coming to the example when it is useful.
One second. Can you tell me how it is captured? Like which one will be captured first? For example, if I click on button, right? I have an event handler on button also, span also, and div also. So in which order?
Div also.
Yeah.
The capturing happens from the div, span, and button. Capturing happens like this, and bubbling happens on the reverse: button, span, and div.
Yeah, that is fine. So what I'm doing is, let me explain. On line 9, 10, and 11, I'm adding for let's say that.
Okay. I'll add event lists first.
Yeah. I don't think div has an on click. Yeah, I think div has an on click, right? Yeah. So we have on click on this all this three, right? So what we'll do is add an on click on all these three tags.
Okay. On click. I'll put an alert box here.
Yeah.
Box div and on click alert box span on click alert box button.
Yeah. So now if I click on button, what will be?
What will by default it will be bubbled only. So I'll first receive the event listener of button and then span and then div.
So will you? So what will be the output? Like what do you will see in the screen? Let's see on the screen.
I'll see a dialog box on top. I'll see an alert box on top of my window which says button. And if I click OK, after that I'll see a span. And if I click OK, after that I'll see a div.
Okay, let's see if that is correct. Like let's see the output.
So I see button here.
Okay, right.
I see span here. Okay. I see div there.
Correct. And now, what is the use of this? Like, how can it be used?
Okay. There might be some use case that whenever we click a grandchild of an element, there's something happening in the parent element. So it can be useful some type like that. Some use case. I'm not sure like what the use case of this.
Correct. For example, this can be prevented. Yeah, that is correct. So if there are 5 elements and we are handling something on the parent, so on another day I can add a 6th element and that handling will be done automatically by parent, right? We don't have to write any code.
Yeah.
That is fine. Yeah. Let's see. Do you know what are prototypes in JavaScript?
Yeah, prototypes are something like default properties that every JavaScript object has and inherits from. Its high level of prototype. Some default properties which can't be seen when you print it. Default some look like I take an array. I did not declare any methods on that array, but I can use the inbuilt features like array.push, array.pop. I can use that. This is because of the prototypal inheritance of JavaScript.
Okay. And what is event loop? Like like a small answer will be fine. Uh, Event loop.
Okay, event loop is actually a custodian, like a conductor in the opera. Like I would describe the event loop as the conductor in the opera, which delegates tasks to the different how would I say, there's call stack, there's web API section when I'm talking about the browser engine, web APIs, and there's microtask queue and there is callback queue. So what event loop does is takes all the asynchronous operations and put it in the web API so that my main thread would not be blocked. The call stack would not be blocked. So whenever my main thread would be free, this event loop takes the event from the respective queues and puts it in the main thread, and it runs
Correct.
the synchronous code.
Right. Proper. Now, one question. So you have set timeout, set interval, right? So these also have
Yeah,
callbacks, and these callbacks are going into callback queue. And you have some
yeah, yeah.
timers also, like 3 seconds, 4 seconds. So
Mm.
my
Yeah.
question is it so this 3 second, right? Is it mandatory
Mm.
that after 3 seconds your callback will run or not? Is it
No,
mandatory
it's
or
not. No, no.
yeah? Why
It's
is it?
not It's not. It'll never happen. It'll only happen when my main thread is free. This callback will run in the main thread. Only when the callback is free, it'll take from the callback queue and puts it in the main thread. So uh, it's not. It's not. It'll not happen that whenever 3 seconds get completed, my callback will run. It's no.
Correct.
It doesn't happen like that.
It doesn't happen. So basically, 3 seconds is the minimum time after which there is a
Minimum
possibility
time.
that your callback can
There's a
run.
possibility that yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And good. Can you tell me a little bit about promises?
Promises. Okay. Uh, Promise is an object which was introduced in ES6 of JavaScript. So what actually initially the thoughts behind creation of the promises were like they're performing asynchronous task was hell. Like we need to use callbacks for after every asynchronous task gets completed. We need to use callback to that to trigger the what should happen next. But when it comes to promises, it gave like a declarative type so that code is more readable. So what actually defines promises is that it is an eventual completion or failure of an asynchronous task. So this is the basic definition of promises. We can access, we can actually say what should happen after a promise resolves by using dot then and dot catch thing like that.
Right. So dot catch is for errors. Right?
Error,
So if it
rejected
rejects,
promises.
okay.
The promise has three states: fulfilled, rejected, and pending. These three states promise operates in between.
And can you tell me like what is React context?
Context API. Okay. 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 React context API solves the problem of prop drilling. So initially, when I have a uh, variable inside of a component that I want that variable to access that variable inside of another component. I can only send it through the props, so through which I can access that variable. But this creates a problem that when I have a nth grandchild to pass the to have access of an element which is in the parent scope. Some like
Right.
so if I want to pass from that to there, I need to pass it through every component that is happening through them. So this is
Hmm.
like a hectic task through passing through the components. To solve this problem, React actually came up with this idea of having a global state. Not actually global, but the state is present inside of that one parent component, and you don't have to do prop drilling. You can access those variables inside uh, con- uh, any of the component inside of the which context provider is there. So there's
Correct.
three things called creating a context, providing a context, and consuming a context.
And do you
Yeah,
know about Redux?
I've
Redux
actually not
framework.
worked on Redux, but I know it's a global state management tool, a third party one. but I've worked on recoil for
Recoil.
the global state management. So, okay,
And
I'll actually tell you the difference between the context and the Redux and recoil also.
okay.
Do you want me to tell it?
Yeah,
Okay,
I was going to ask for context and Redux. If you know, you can go ahead. But
okay.
yeah.
Uh, Context, Redux and recoil operates on the same page. There are some similarities, but what actually happens with the context? The problem with the context API is that it's not optimized. So we know that whenever a component re-renders, the childs inside which we are accessing those components are also re-rendering. So every time my global state changes, my whole component tree would re-render. So this is not an optimized approach. What Redux and some third-party state management libraries like Recoil brings is that the components which are subscribed to the global state only re-renders when when the state changes. So, but in case of context API, the whole component tree which is under the context provider will re-render. So I don't want this to happen. I want only my components which are subscribed to the global state only to re-render. This is primary difference between these
Right.
the two things.
Right. So basically, if context is not a global store, context is just a state
Yeah,
which is on the top level
state,
of the app.
top level of the,
And
yeah, it's not a
yeah,
global state.
correct. And the concept of subscribing and global store that comes for Redux and all the third-party libraries, right?
Uh,
That is
Third
optimized
party
for this.
libraries.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, do you know like when we should use context and when we should use Redux? Redux.
Uh, when you're going to like small apps, which does not depend on more optimization techniques, which does not require any optimization to small app like the stopwatch app, no, not stopwatch app, like how would I say? Yeah, the Paytm
Anything.
clone I did, it does not require any third party library. The context API itself is enough for this small apps. But when it comes to like big apps like Facebook, Instagram things, we need these third party libraries because we cannot afford any re-rendering stuff. Components get states gets changed, but every time my state gets changed, I cannot afford re-render for every component.
Yeah, that's correct. You can also think it like if there is a state which is not changing much, like it is changing once, it's a small state, like a theme of the app, right? Nobody is going to
Yeah,
change it
yeah,
every time, right?
no,
So we can keep
every
it in
time, yeah.
context. And if
Context, yeah,
a
you can say.
yeah, and if a cart of a
Mm,
e-commerce website, that is going to change very frequently.
yeah,
That is something we can maintain in Redux. And these two things can be
yeah,
used like together as well. Like no issues, we can use both
yeah.
of them
No
together.
issues. We can use both of them. And in context also gives me like I cannot. I have to use only one context. I can create multiple contexts also in context API.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. You can use multiple. Okay. So now, can you tell me what is use memo and use callback?
Okay, use memo and use callback. Okay, use memo is primarily used for uh, a task which is expensive in nature. So if I run a function that is expensive, like it takes time consuming and it's consuming my resources also. So I don't want it to run every time my component gets re-rendered. I don't want it to run. So what I'll do is I'll wrap up the component inside of the use memo so that the return value is cached for the first time it's run. So every time I call that function, I'll only get that particular value. I don't want it runs only the first time, and after every time it'll return me the value itself. So and I can also twist it that twist not twist. I can use it like every time this variable changes, you need to rerun the whole function itself. So it'll caches the return value and it puts it and it gives me there. This is use memo. But when it comes to uh, use callback is actually caching a function itself. It does not cache the returned value. Every time it caches the function and gives the function to us. So like when it comes to when our functions declared with not without using use callback, what it happens is every time the component re-renders, the function is created again. Like the variables
Correct.
are getting created again, the function is also created again. So I don't want that. So if I have some heavy functions that re-renders every time, I cannot afford that also. So I'll put it in a use callback so that I can I can
Uh,
pass that creation of function thing.
yeah, everything is correct. What do you mean by a heavy function? Like, what is a heavy function?
Heavy function. How would I describe it? Like
Heavy function in the sense processing can be heavy. A function which does the
yeah,
processing, that is heavy. But
process. Mm,
why we use callback is so as you said, right? When it re-renders, basically it will create one more instance of that function.
instead of that
Now,
function. Yeah.
correct, correct. Now, if you pass this function as a prop to a child component, and if you are not caching it,
Okay.
then the props is changing, right?
Props is
Child props
changing.
is
Yeah, that
changing.
also
Correct.
re-renders
Right,
the
right, right,
component.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. So
Yeah.
if you want to stop that,
Yeah.
you have to cache it.
Mm. There's another thing called memo also in React. So which like
Uh-huh.
which acts like when my props changes, my my component will rerun. That's it.
Right,
This
right.
is
So
a memo.
correct, correct. So the first step is to make the child export as React.memo. And then the
Mm,
second
yeah.
step will be the props should not change. Like we should try that prop should not change. Otherwise, re-render of
Props should
child
not
will
change.
also happen.
Mm,
So if in the
happen. Yeah.
props you have a function, you do a use callback, right?
Mm, yeah.
And
Yeah.
one
I
last,
use that.
yeah, yeah. Last question: what are the lifecycle methods in React?
Lifecycle methods in React. Okay. These lifecycle methods are applicable to the class-based components which React uses before the functional components. There are three lifecycle methods. One is component mounting of the component phase and updating the component phase and unmounting phase. So what actually happens in the mounting phase? So in class-based components, there is this method called component did mount. So whenever my component mounts, that will run. That whatever you put inside that function will run. And whenever my state gets updated, the component did update will update or did update will run. And whenever my components get unmounted, so whatever you write inside of component unmounted will run. These three things are replaced by use effect inside of the functional components. Use effect is a hook which replaces these lifecycle methods used in the uh, class-based components inside of the function components.
Right. And how use effect is doing component unmount? Can you write here only? You can write
Okay.
just here. You can write. No issues.
I don't want to use effect snippet. So use effect use effect actually takes in a function. So and a dependency array. So whenever this use effect this callback will run the first time the component get mount. After the component gets mount, this will run. So this will actually like it in the class based components. Component did update represent
Component did
this
update
thing
or
inside of
component did mount.
component did mount. Sorry. Component did mount represents this thing, which is running this function callback function after the component gets mounted.
Correct.
Okay. Next thing is component updation. So whenever I have a state variable, I'll pass the state variable here. So whenever the state variable gets changed, this callback function will run again. So this represents the component updation phase inside of the class based component.
Right.
Okay. So after this component unmount, so I'll have a return thing. I also have a return thing. So this return function will run whenever my component gets unmounted. So this represents the component unmounting phase inside of that class based component. And
And
if I
what?
do not give this dependency array, so you were saying something?
No, no. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. When if I don't give this dependency array, every time my component re-renders, this will also run. This function will run. Yeah. And unmounting, this will run anyway. This is the use of it thing.
Okay. Okay. And what we should like generally do in non-mounting phase? Like, is there anything we should do?
If there are any timeouts or set intervals, we can clear those set intervals inside of this unmounting phase. This is one thing. And
You want to reset
if
any
there,
state?
if my you want to reset any state, if there are any socket connections that are there, if you want to disconnect those socket connection when your component get unmounted, so you can do that here also. Yeah.
Right. And last question is, what is UserF? Like we already used it
Use,
previously.
yeah, we also used it. Okay.
Yeah.
UseRef is used to persist a value across a re-render. So like I wanted to persist the timer ID across the re-renders. So I used useref. So that value will not be changed. But and useref does not cause the re-render because it's not a state variable.
Right.
And we can use useref mostly to access the DOM elements also.
Yeah. Actually,
Sometimes.
yeah. The use of user is accessing the DOM element. What we did there is
Yeah.
a trick, but
Trick. Yeah.
the main thing is it should
Main thing
be
is DOM elements. Right?
yeah, pretty much that's good enough. Like I'm done. I'm done with all the questions. Like